While we're being distracted by the Russia-Ukraine war, Elon Musk changing Twitter to X. I guess that's what it's called now until he decides to change it to another name. Conservatives versus liberals talking about the woke agenda. Something's going on in this country. Housing affordability is at an all-time low, and that's what we'll be discussing today. Let's dive in. Let's start with what is housing affordability and how is that typically looked at? Well, housing affordability is looked at through something called the Housing Affordability Index. The Housing Affordability Index is a measure that indicates whether an American household is able to purchase a typical single-family home. So let's break that down a little further. The Housing Affordability Index measures whether a potential homeowner can afford to take out a 30-year fixed mortgage to purchase a single-family home in a metropolitan area. It's compiled and maintained by the National Security of Realtors, a trade group representing more than 1.5 real estate professionals in the United States. So essentially, right, they're taking data from a lot of the large metropolitan areas, looking at the 30-year fixed mortgage and seeing how many families can actually afford to buy a home. According to this Bloomberg article, U.S. housing affordability remains at a record low. It seems to be two key reasons for that right now. First one is higher mortgage rates are offsetting the slight drop in median home price, and the income actually needed to even be able to afford a home has actually rose. As the mortgage rates continue to increase, the amount of income you need to afford the home that one would want for their family is slowly rising. So you need to make a ton of money or more money than you typically would. Anyway, back to this article about U.S. housing affordability. The National Association of Realtors of Housing Affordability Index was unchanged at 87.8 in July, matching the lowest levels in data back to 1989. Jesus. A level of 100 means a family with the median income has enough income to qualify for a mortgage at the median home price. The typical family spent 28.5% of their income on the principal and interest of their mortgage payments each month, also matching an all-time high. So what that means is Americans are typically, even when you do have the ability to purchase a house, you are now spending more of your income just to pay for said house, which is insane, which means there's less money to save, less money to invest in the stock market. This is for the winners who can actually afford a house. What about those who are still struggling to find the down payment to actually even get into said house, pay off said house and get to what we would call financial freedom or not owing anyone anything? Qualifying income for a mortgage based on a 20% down payment was a record $104,496 in July. That means you needed $100,000, a little over $100,000 as a down payment in order to buy a house in July. Think about how long that takes to save up to get to $100,000 just to have a down payment to put on a house. Absolutely insane. Olivia, that's nuts.
That is insane. I don't know how long that would take me to save up for $100,000, but it would take me years and years and years and years. That is crazy. I'm
in a job and I think there's, I guess the top 10% can save for that, but then there's also 90% of people that can't save that type of money. Luckily, I'm in tech, right? And the job that I do pays $300,000 to $400,000 on a given year. And so, yeah, after all my expenses and everything else, I could save, $10,000, $20,000. I could save enough. I could actually have put together a plan to save. But I do remember when I was making $65,000 a year. And then at another point, as I was coming up through my career, I was making $100,000 a year. If you make the mistake of having any credit card, any debt whatsoever, having to help out one's family, or you decide to get a really cool car and you want to go out and travel, there's no way you can comfortably save relatively quickly to buy a home. So I think the best way to illustrate this is just to take a look at a reaction video of, I think, this couple in Indiana that's trying to buy a home and going through the same thing.
For years, John and Angie Collier saved.
Oh, this is nice.
Eager to buy a first home in Fishers, Indiana, attracted by the good schools and proximity to work. But pursuing the American dream has proved daunting.
Oh, sorry, outbid.
Fishers, named by Money magazine one of the best places to live, is part of a national trend as real estate investment groups buy up houses in cash and rent them out, in some cases, to the very families who dreamed of owning them. In January, 33% of all homes purchased in the U.S. were bought by investors, often Wall Street-backed companies with multi-billion-dollar funds.
I mean, that's wild in itself. It almost makes it, Olivia, like, I mean, I'm getting to the point where now, like, to me, like, everything is like it's almost like a psyop to me. Like, I don't even know what that word means, but I think it means scam. Like, those of us who are becoming financially, like if you take a look at any financial education, I'm like, yo, like, while people are going to football games, the Nebraska game, watching, Deion Sanders' son perform, and all these basketball games, it's like, yo, like, BlackRock, Vanguard, they're fucking buying up everything from under you, like whatever's remaining, to the point like where the U.S. will get like Canada, will get like London, and like New York City and some of the bigger cities. I don't know if there's a perfect answer, right? Like, I think the American answer typically was, oh, just work harder and move up the ranks. But when corporations are going to be owning, like already bought 33%, and I think according to a CNBC study, that by 2030, 40% of the homes in the U.S., I guess single family homes in the U.S. will be owned by corporations. That's even becoming a state where, like, a situation where you'll just rent forever. But I saw you shake your head, like, isn't it like you're just like what are you thinking?
It's just ridiculous that 1/3 of home purchases are by investment companies, most of them from Wall Street. What's going through my mind at the moment is the government must know this. Why are they not doing anything? Are there no measures in place to limit the amount that large investment companies can limit the amount of how much they can purchase? It's almost like I have no words.
I can actually answer that question. There's a video floating on the web where there's a recruiter that works for BlackRock that says you can buy a senator for $10,000. And so when you can buy legislation and buy government officials that cheap, then there's no chance at all for those who aren't bribing, lobbying for, and have interest in the well-being of the United States or the citizens of a country as a whole. Yeah, there's like no chance when the lawmakers are now being bribed and coerced, just everything, right? And just being paid off in order to pass laws that create profits for large corporations, not necessarily do what's in the best interests of the day-to-day investor. Absolutely insane to me. Let's continue to watch this. That was like the first couple seconds of the video. Like, 33%. Oh, got it me.
The Colliers currently rent in a town near Fishers from one of the nation's biggest house rental companies. Their rent recently raised 8%.
Good to see you. Come on in.
4 times in recent weeks, they've been outbid by investors with all cash offers.
It can be, discouraging when you get overbid by, companies.
How do you save when you're spending $2,200 a month just to rent?
I mean, that's a good question, right? So when we ended up buying this house, like, we were going through the same exact scenario. And I thought because I had like a high income, like I was big stuff. I was like, oh, I got a down payment. I got all my papers. I got everything ready to buy a house. And then one of the houses that we put an offer on, I forgot what it was. It was like, the house was $675 or something like that. Somebody came with an all cash offer for like $700. And they called me back and were like, hey, we'll sell it to you if you buy it for $720. I'm not in the business of overbidding, which I'm sure we overbidded on this house, even though when I looked at the current rates, it seems like we made a decent decision on this house. I won't even call it a great decision, because that would be getting it for 20% lower, which wasn't even a thing at the time. But I was so surprised how many offers just went for cash. And now that I'm thinking about it and watching this video, the cash wasn't another person, because I was like, hey, like, I'm top 10%. I work for one of the number 1 companies in the world, or the top 10 companies in the world. Like, how would I be getting just outbidded? And the reason is, no matter how much you make, you're not going to be able to compete with Wall Street investor companies, right? And then this problem is even exacerbated when you have the fact that the money that they're using to save for the house is now being eaten up by the fact that rent is actually going up. So it seems like there's no win-win scenario in this case.
So these companies have you on both ends.
Yeah, it's definitely a conundrum.
In some Fishers neighborhoods, investors own more than half of the homes, according to realtor Laura Turner.
This is one of the neighborhoods that investors have really targeted. They're coming in, they're buying it at cash, and then they're going to hold them as rentals.
Fishers mayor Scott Fadness is frustrated by the surge of distant, faceless landlords.
Have you been able to talk to any of these companies?
It's very difficult. So take, for instance, if you have a high grass and weed issue, a code enforcement issue, I mean, if they own 4,000 homes, who is the individual that you can go talk to about a specific problem?
The problem here is once everything becomes corporate, there's no more handshake dealing or making sure that the person who's living in your house, like there's a mutual interest. It's more like now you get a faceless corporation. And let's say you even call the corporation. Like, hey, this is Laura. How can I help you today? Oh, your house has, weed and the plumbing doesn't work. We'll send somebody out in a week. I mean, I've had toilet issues. You can't fucking wait a week, like for like plumbing or you gotta get that shit fixed immediately. And I'm sure there's so much bureaucracy and red tape for that you have to wait a couple days to get somebody out to your house. Whereas if you own the house, at least you're invested to just get it fixed right away. And so the problem is not only the fact that it's a faceless corporation, is now you have to go through the same corporate bureaucracy that you try to escape in your day-to-day life. Now you got to do that same just to get fixed in the house that you're living in. F***ing up your quality of life. Totally f***ed up.
In a statement, the National Rental Home Council said NRHC member companies own just a fraction of the homes throughout the state of Indiana, and that its 5 largest member companies maintain an A+ rating by the Better Business Bureau. Builder Steve Lanes argues rental companies aren't taking away possibilities from families, but in many cases, creating them.
There are a segment of people who are no longer able to buy a home because they can't afford that home, but they don't want to be in an apartment. They're looking for those opportunities to rent in those communities.
After getting outbid time and again, the Colliers say they've given up on Fishers.
Is the American dream still accessible?
I think the American dream has definitely changed. And from just talking to you, like there isn't anything called the English dream or the Canadian dream, because that's been long gone with trying to own a home. I think you have to either do two things, right? So in this video, Fisher, Indiana is not an option for these people. But where I struggle is like, what is that commute like if you have to go into the office? So if you work from home or you have a job where you work from home, then yes, you can still purchase a home because you don't necessarily have that commute anymore. But if you do not and you have to commute to the office, then you don't have a lot of options. But saying, hey, I work for said company in large metropolitan area, I'm gonna buy a home close to where I work so I can have high quality of life, that seems to be going 100% like out the window and no longer an option, especially as these corporations keep on buying up homes, right? I think 33% in July or whatever that last stat we just saw was insane.
I think the American dream is changing. Our society may be going in that direction where we are getting further away from ownership, but I don't think it's the right direction.
I love the screened-in porch.
They've put in a bid on a home in a town farther out. Their American dream modified, not broken.
All right, takeaways for this video. The American dream is getting harder and harder to come by. With corporations buying up homes, options for how the individual American family that wants to buy a single family home, those options have now changed. You can buy further out and just have a longer commute, right? That's one option. You'll have to take a look at buying a townhome or a condo, and then eventually after savings or appreciation, maybe after, said number of years, 10, 15 years, you can now move into a larger home. Third option is you may have to switch states or switch jobs in order to actually find a specific scenario that works out for you. Or either you have to switch jobs in order to find a job where you can work from home in order to be able to not have a commute and have a desirable house or desirable location, or something further out where you don't necessarily need to go into the office, where you can have a desirable house outside of a metropolitan area. None of those options are ideally enticing. None of them I would call it dream. I would call it compromise. I would call it just making it work. Hopefully this puts you on notice as to what's currently going on, and you can make some changes as to how you spend your time, resources, and effort in order to try to put yourself in a better financial position moving forward. Not the best news, but at least you know exactly what's happening. And one thing I like to say, or I'm saying now, I don't even know I like to say it, is that now you have the information, you can do what you will with it. With that said, if you like videos like this, if you find this video informative, I would suggest that you subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next video. Until next time, peace out.